tortillas. They're not just for tacos. Today they're gonna add the ideal flavor and complex texture to my Mexican tortilla soup with chicken. I'm Chef Heidi Fink, and that's what we're cooking on the coast. Welcome. Today we are making tortilla soup, which is a classic dish originating from Mexico, made with a delicious homemade broth. I'm going to be showing you how to make the most authentic version you can based on ingredients you can find here, but I will also be talking about a quick version that you can make that's easier. So let's get started. This soup has a bunch of different components. One, of course, is the broth, one of the most important. So we've got some broth that I started here. It's been simmering for about 45 minutes. This has got some chicken legs, some onions, some garlic, and some cilantro stems, as well as some salt. It's pretty quick to make. You just throw everything in the pot. It takes about 45 minutes. So now what I'm gonna do is just pull these chicken bits out. So this was 4 full legs, and I cut the thighs separate from the drumsticks. You can also just use drumsticks. You can use just thighs. It doesn't really matter, just as long as you use a dark meat, because that's what's gonna give you the most flavor and collagen in this broth. And you wanna make sure that the chicken is nice and soft so that you can pull it from the bones. And I'm just trying to be careful and not pull all the yummy bits out of there. So you're going to just let this chicken cool until it is soft enough to kind of shred off the bone. We'll get rid of the gristle, the fat, the skin, and just shred the chicken meat, and that's gonna be the meat that we use in our soup. So I'll just set this aside. Now we're gonna work on the flavor base for the soup. So we are still using this broth, but we're gonna saute a flavor base first and then add the broth to it. So the flavor base starts with onions and garlic. Let's turn this on. We've got a chopped onion and 4 cloves of garlic. The cloves of garlic are left whole for this. We're just gonna saute them to soften them, and then we're gonna be pureeing them with a couple other ingredients. But I just wanna get the onions and garlic going because they're gonna take a few minutes. So let's get a couple tablespoons of oil in there. There we go. Now we're just adding our chopped onion and garlic. So now let's talk about some of the other ingredients that are gonna go in this flavor base. So most important are dried chilies, okay? So there's different types of dried chilies you can buy, and this is where I'm gonna talk about what you would do if you can't find these. So you can go to specialty Mexican grocery stores to find these, and there's different types. There's pasilla, ancho, New Mexico, guajillo. I'm using pasilla chilies for this. This is like a skinny dark chili with kind of a sweet flavor. And what you do is I'm flinging seeds everywhere. So you open them up. This is part of the point. You're opening them up and you have to get rid of all these seeds. This is actually one of my favorite parts, is squeezing all the seeds out, but I'm making a mess. You get all the seeds out, then you rip the chili into small pieces. Let's just get rid of these seeds. Okay, then you rip the chili into small pieces, and if you find the membranes inside, you can get rid of those as well. So just break it into small pieces. Oh, there's even more seeds. So as you break it up, you can get rid of more seeds. There we go. So get rid of all this. And then what you do is you soak it with boiling water. So I just boiled my kettle. So for this recipe, you need 4 of these chilies, just soaked with enough water to cover for about 20 to 30 minutes, just until they're softened. And those are also gonna get pureed into our flavor base. Another thing that's very traditionally put into the flavor base are charred tomatoes. So you can char the tomatoes like on a barbecue or whatever, and you could also be charring the onions and the garlic. But this is one thing that makes it easier, is if I saute those, then I can use something called fire roasted tomatoes. You can just buy this at any grocery store. So the tomatoes have been charred ahead of time, and then you have this beautiful char on the tomatoes with like a really nice smoky flavor. So that's an easy way to skip that step. And then finally, we're gonna add some chipotle chili. I've pureed that. It isn't necessary because we're gonna puree everything together, but that comes from this little can. So chipotle is a smoke-dried jalapeno pepper that's reconstituted in a tomato garlic sauce. So it has, again, a really smoky flavor, but also quite spicy. So this is all gonna give us some of that classic tortilla soup flavor that we want. Okay. So I just want the tomatoes and garlic to soften a bit more before I puree it with all this yummy stuff. And then I want to talk about the tortillas. For this recipe, you have to get some corn tortillas. So the small corn tortillas, this is not made with wheat tortillas. And then they get sliced and fried ahead of time. So depending on the brand of tortilla that you get, you will have to actually put them in the oven ahead of time. So I like to cut them in half and then stack them and cut them into very thin slices like this. So what happens is they become like a crispy garnish on the soup, but then also they kind of soak into the soup like crackers and swell up and get really delicious. And that fresh corn taste, you can really taste it. These tortillas are quite soft and they have a high water content. So if you go to try to fry these, they're just not gonna fry. They kind of like sit there and they sadly absorb oil and they just don't have that nice crispy lightness. So you wanna pre-dry them out in the oven ahead of time. Okay, so I'll throw these in the oven. And I just wanna be clear, I only did a couple of them because I did a much larger batch earlier. Let me show. So these are some that I pre-dried out earlier, and you wanna do a whole package, 12 tortillas for the amount of soup that we're making, okay? You don't necessarily have to let them go brown like I did because we are going to be frying them again to get them nice and crispy. The oil also enhances that corn tortilla flavor. But for instance, if you wanted to mitigate the amount of fat that's in here, you could let them get this crispy in the oven and then just salt them. And that will just kind of remove a difficult step. So this is almost ready. The onions are starting to pick up a bit of color. That's gonna really help with the flavor. We wanna make sure that the garlic is soft. But we are pretty much ready for the next. You can put this into a blender, but because I have my hand blender here, I'm just gonna put everything into a big measuring cup. So I'm gonna start with, these are the 4 pasilla chilies that I soaked, and I'm keeping all the soaking liquid, okay? Then I'm gonna add my fire roasted tomatoes. So this is 2/3 of a cup of fire roasted tomatoes, and I did drain those ahead of time. Then I've got my 2 tablespoons of chipotle. You can use less if you want, like a tablespoon. Another good way to get that smoky flavor without any spice is to use smoked paprika. Okay, now before I put the onion mixture into here, I'm just gonna add a couple spices to it. So I'm gonna add some Mexican oregano, which I always love to rub between my hands because you get that amazing smell. Mexican oregano is a little bit like a cross between marjoram and oregano, I think. It just has like a slightly sweeter flavor. You could use whatever oregano you happen to have at home. So we're just sauteing that for 10 seconds just to release those flavors. Then I'm gonna put this all here and we're gonna puree it up. And we are gonna be using this pot. No need to clean it out because we're gonna be using it again in just a second. Oh, I gotta get this last bit here. No chunks left. There we go. And I'm just gonna grab my little blend-a-thon thing here. You know, it smells really good in here. As soon as you add that bit of cumin, it just elevates it. You wanna get this as smooth as you possibly can. All right, so once it's as smooth as you can get it, if there's any chunks like this, actually, I'm just gonna show you. If you get any left that don't grind up, that are stuck on the blades, don't put them in the soup. That won't happen. If you use one of your high-powered blender, you know, like a Vitamix or Blendtec, that won't happen. But sometimes this little guy is one of my favorite machines, but sometimes it can't handle like chili skins. Okay, so now we're gonna put our pot back on the heat. Remember, like I said, don't clean it. And we're gonna use it right away to saute this paste. So we're gonna you need 4 tablespoons of oil for this part. And something I'm gonna talk about when we're back in the kitchen is different types of oil that you can use for this. All right, so we have to saute this for about 15 to 20 minutes. And so one thing that I wanted to tell you is this process, if you can't find chilies, dried chilies, you can still make this soup very successfully. What I do is I buy a jar of really good quality salsa. Usually I buy like a chipotle salsa, and I take about a cup of that and puree it with some additional chipotle. It already has the tomato, the onions, the garlic, and the chipotle adds that smokiness. You can just puree that, fry it with a little bit of oil, and then you can add your broth. Oh man, this smells so good. I can't wait. So we've got our tortillas in the oven drying out, getting ready for the next step. We've got our flavor base sauteing here to intensify the flavor. So when we come back, we're gonna make this into a really delicious soup, but next we're on the road.
Cooking on on the Road is brought to you by Whisk Victoria, the small but mighty kitchen gadget store for every home chef.
We're here in the home commercial kitchen of Islanders Mexican Sauces. I'm here with Lily, the founder and owner, and she's going to tell us all about it. This looks amazing. I'm so excited. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you, Heidi, for coming.
Absolutely. So tell us how you got started.
This is a recipe for my grandpa's.
From your grandpa?
Yeah, everything started and I bring it with me when I come to Vancouver in 2006.
Yeah.
And it's the way to show the people our flavor, our tradition, keeping the way how we cook it. Friends start to asking for salsa, like, can I get your salsa? And suddenly one day we went to the market and they start to like our product.
Yes.
We start receiving calls and a snowball growing and growing.
Yeah. So you built this gorgeous commercial kitchen in your home. And from this small space, you create these amazing sauces, goes into local grocery stores. So what do you think makes your company different, your salsas different?
The process.
Yeah.
Then everything is fresh, cooking in small batches.
In small batches.
We don't want just quantity.
Right.
We are working a lot in quality, my husband and I, and every batch that is going from here, we are sure wanna be the same flavor and the same quality that we give you every day.
So these are fresh, I noticed, because you had them in the fridge, so there's no preservatives.
No sugar added.
No sugar, nothing, so it's fresh. Local ingredients as much as possible, but some of the specialty ingredients you get from Mexico, because that is the best. So I see that you have 3 different flavors. What are they?
We have sassy tomato, savory jalapeno, and spicy lovers.
Okay. Oh.
Sassy tomato is a fresh and zesty. It's like pico de gallo, but blended.
Okay.
The next one is the jalapeno.
Yes.
It's a jalapeno-based salsa. It's a medium spicy. And it's a fresh spicy that honestly goes with everything. The spicy one is this chili.
Oh, so these ones, the chile de árbol.
Chile de árbol, yeah. It's mix of dried chilies and it's not burning your tongue, but give you a lot of flavor.
Okay, I am super excited to try these. Can we try them?
Let's go try it.
Okay.
Let's go.
Awesome. All right, I'm so excited to try this. What have you cooked up for us?
We have a tacos. This is a ground beef tacos with some fajita on it.
Okay, so we got these delicious tortillas. Do you want one?
Yes, please.
All right. Which ones am I going to try with this, do you think?
Normally it's the green one.
The green
but
one?
When you mix mild and medium, it's zesty with spicy. We will give you the taco flavor.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to do some of both. So this is the sassy tomato, and then this is the jalapeno. That is delicious. That is, seriously, that's incredible. Oh my God, that is so good.
Thank you.
Okay.
This is the island flavors now.
Yes.
With a Mexican touch.
Yes, exactly. I love it. Island flavors with a Mexican touch.
Yeah.
Let's try this spicy one. Hopefully it doesn't kill me. Oh yeah. Oh, that was really good. This is so good. So honestly, if you guys want to get Mexico on your plate, you can go to one of your local grocery stores and pick up Islanders Mexican Sauces. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
incredible.
Heidi. Thank you so much, Heidi, for coming.
Anytime. Welcome back. We are making tortilla soup and we've only got a few steps left. So I've had this flavor paste sauteing for about 15 or 20 minutes. What you're looking for is that it's getting a little bit dry. All the liquid is evaporated and the oils have started sauteing and blooming the flavors of all these aromatics, and it's smelling amazing, like caramelized onions, chilies, smokiness, so good. So now that it's at this stage and it's ready, we're gonna strain our chicken broth that we made earlier into it. That's why I didn't strain it earlier. I just took the chicken out of it because I knew I was just gonna dump it right in here, so save on dishes. So I'm putting a strainer here because I don't want those chunks of onions and cilantro stems, etc., in my smooth and beautiful soup. There we go. I'll just take this to the sink. So the other reason I like to pour it directly into the pot is then I never make the accident of draining the stock down the sink, which I know many of us have done that by accident. So now we're gonna bring this back to a boil. And we have to let this simmer for a few minutes. You can simmer it for up to 10 minutes. You can make the soup to this stage and then chill it for several days, because the soup itself, when you serve it, is just actually this broth, nice and hot with a whole bunch of garnishes. I'm gonna try to swap these two. Let's wish me some luck here. Okay, whew, I did it. Okay, so this is about ½ inch of oil in this pan, and I'm gonna use it to fry our tortillas. So remember the tortillas that I dried in the oven? Now I'm gonna fry them in this oil. So I'm just gonna make sure the oil's nice and hot. We have too many burners going, okay. So I have here a baking sheet covered with paper towel, or you could use some brown paper to just absorb the grease from frying the tortillas. And you wanna have some salt handy, because you're gonna salt them as soon as you bring them out. And then you also wanna make sure you've got some tongs or something to get them out of the oil. So how do we tell if this oil's hot? If no, see, so if the tortilla just sits in there, sadly, it's not ready. You want it to be sizzling on contact. You do not want it to be like going brown on contact. We're just supposed to crisp them up and enhance that corn flavor. You could also use some crushed store-bought corn tortillas. It's kind of blasphemous, because one of the beauties of tortilla soup is the nice shreds of hand-cut tortillas. But in a pinch, no one will notice. It tastes the same. So while I'm waiting for that oil to heat up, let me just talk about the garnishes we're putting in the soup. So we've got the chicken that I cooked in our broth, shredded up. I have some cilantro leaves. I've got some feta cheese here. The feta cheese is a good dupe for cojita, which is the cheese they would use in Mexico. And then I have an avocado, which I'm gonna chop up. I feel like our tortillas are ready. Let's try. Oh yeah, here we go. Here we go. So I'm gonna do this in batches so that I don't cool down the oil too much. You're not looking for it to change color necessarily, although these have been changing color, probably because I dried them out so nicely. I'm gonna pull these out. Then we are going to throw in some more. So if you didn't dry them out in the oven ahead of time, these would just take forever to get crispy. Now the other thing you can do, and I do this often when I make tortilla soup, is that I fry the tortillas earlier in the day and leave them in a container with a tight fitting lid after they've cooled off. And then I can actually use some of this oil that I fried the tortillas in to saute the stuff, the flavor base for the soup. So you get a bit of that corn tortilla flavor as well. Let's get some salt. Okay. Sprinkle this with some salt, because if you add a bunch of saltless tortillas to your soup base, it's not gonna taste that good. All right. Now I just wanna bring this back up to a boil. So ideally you would let that simmer for a few minutes, but I'm just gonna start planning our soup for service. So I'm just gonna dice up this avocado. I'm praying that it is good, but I have multiples to choose from, because sometimes you can't tell. I will give you a tip to how to tell. Oh yeah, pretty good, pretty good. Let's see this other one. If you pop the little stem off, if it's green in the middle, that usually means that the avocado is good. It's just a tip if you're not sure. And I just like to cut avocado like this, and we're just gonna cut it into a small dice, and then we're gonna build our soup. We're gonna add a bit of lime juice to that as well. And then I have to taste it to see if it needs some salt, and then we will be ready to serve. Look at this beautiful avocado. Okay, lime juicer, lime juice. This broth is nice and warm. I'm just gonna throw some lime juice in there, taste it. There we go. All right, guys. We are ready. We're gonna stir that lime juice in there and give it a taste. Okay. The pressure's always on. I've got all these cameras on me. Gotta taste it. Oh yeah, that's perfect. Okay, I have 2 bowls. We are going to put some chicken in there, some of the shredded chicken that we had earlier. Obviously this batch of soup makes quite a lot, probably 6 bowls of soup, but we're just gonna do up 2. You can just put as much or as little chicken in as you want. Obviously don't put like a massive pile so it becomes a stew rather than a soup. Then we're gonna put some tortillas in there, and we're gonna save some for garnish on top as well. So remember that these will swell up, so just be mindful of that. Don't put too many in there. We're gonna put a little bit of avocado in there. Ooh, this looks so pretty. Then we're gonna ladle on our soup. Then we'll sprinkle some feta cheese and some cilantro on top. So one of the things I love about this soup is that you can make this big batch of broth ahead of time, and then people can just assemble bowls as they need to. Oh man, ladling it on, I'm just getting like the waft of delicious soup coming at me. It's so good. All right, got to clean up the edges of these bowls and make them look pretty. Okay, I'm gonna turn this off. I'm gonna pull a chef here. Chefs are always doing this, wiping the bowls like that. Perfect. Okay, now we're gonna put some cheese. Like I said, I've got feta, but if you could find cojita, that'd be amazing. Or you could put another type of cheese on that you like. It's all up to you. And I don't know if I mentioned this, that when I make the quick version, I will buy often a rotisserie chicken for that. So cilantro leaves, you can chop them up too, but I like leaves. They kind of have a really pretty look. There we have it. Delicious Mexican tortilla soup. So good.
Pairings are brought to you by Liquor Plus. Discover the plus.
Tangy, zesty, and a little bit spicy. This tortilla soup has so much flavor, it's gonna need a beverage that can stand up to it. With us is Cheryl joining us from Liquor Plus again. Thanks so much for joining us.
And thank you for having me again. It's great to be here.
Exciting as always.
Aw, wonderful. I'm looking forward to your tortilla soup for sure.
Oh, I'm looking forward to whatever you brought. What did you bring us?
Well, tangy, zippy,
oh, yeah.
spicy.
You got it all
It's gonna
covered.
pair beautifully, yes. Today we brought from our Vancouver Island Brewing, of course, our first craft brewery on the island. So we brought the lager with us today. That's the one we're gonna pair with the soup, because it's just it's nice dry, it's crisp.
It sounds like the flavors are gonna match quite well.
I think they will, yeah. Nice and refreshing. So, and lagers, again, they pair so well with spicy Mexican fare.
Yeah.
So cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, that's good.
So good.
It tastes like just the essence of beer, you know?
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right? Like
yeah.
just one of those beers that can go with everything.
Yeah, totally.
All right, I'm digging in.
Okay, let's dig in. I'm gonna try and get some chicken. The chicken's at the bottom.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, if you can find
I'll
some.
dig for the chicken. Awesome. Oh. Oh.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
you like
those
it?
flavors are ridiculous. Oh, that's so lovely. So flavorful.
It really does have a lot of flavor. All the steps you put into it really bring out.
Oh my, yeah.
taste. I'm gonna try
really,
this
really,
here.
of course.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's great because the soup is actually kind of richer than you think it's going to be, and that actually really cuts the richness.
You
as
know
well.
what? Absolutely. 100% it does. I noticed that right away. So
Yeah.
perfect pairing, I would say.
Yes, actually, well done.
Way
High
to go,
five.
Cheryl.
That's right. Give yourself a pat on the back.
I'm happy to hear that. Happy to be here again.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you can come back again.
I will. Thanks, Heidi.
I'd love to see your take on this tortilla soup. Make it, take a picture, and post it to social media. I'm Chef Heidi Fink. The more you learn, the better it tastes. You know, the first time I ever tried cilantro, I was like, who put the soap in the salsa? But then I did. But then after that, I was like, actually, I kind of like this taste.
I love soap.
Yeah, soap, bring it on.
Thrills gum.
Oh my God. I forgot about thrills.
Yeah.
So good though.